Warm, I want to say warm to make us all feel a bit warm. Warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining. For those of you I don't know, my name is Natasha Milani, CEO of South Australian Leaders. I'd like to start by acknowledging that the land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the living Kaurna people today. I particularly want to welcome our three panellists. Anjani Amrit, my colleague who co-hosts this monthly morning pep talk with me every month. So thank you, but it's even more special to have her here in person. So give us a wave, Anjani. Normally I say give us a wave online, but now we can do it in person. Sandy Verschoor, a very good friend of mine, probably needs not much introduction to most people in the room, but I'm going to get Sandy and Tiffany to introduce themselves in a minute. But Sandy, as the former Lord Mayor of Adelaide and well embedded and a huge contributor to our arts sector. So wonderful to have you here, Sandy. And Tiffany D'Souza Machado, who's from the University of Adelaide, and also the founder of the Village Foundation, and she'll tell us more about that in a minute. And I also welcome those who have joined us online. And for those of you that are online, you can't see the room, but there's a room full of fabulous smiling faces of amazing women. So thank you for joining us for this very special occasion where we're actually meeting face to face. I'm just going to start by getting Sandy and Tiffany to just do a brief sort of 1 minute introduction to who they are, and then I'm going to hand over to them to do the 3 minutes leaders, share their 3 minute leaders insight. Embrace self-love is our topic this morning. Anjani will then share an insight following Tiffany and Sandy and summarise the learnings for today. And then for those of us that are in the room at 9:30, we're going to move into the workshop with Anjani around growth mindset. So, Sandy, I'll just start with you. A little bit of intro. Who is Sandy Verschoor?
I'm trying to work out who I am right now. So, for those of you that have met me, I spent the last 4 years as Lord Mayor, which was extraordinary, and I'm incredibly proud of what we achieved, but it was also probably the hardest 4 years that anybody has had in politics, and particularly trying to make it or help a city survive what was happening with COVID. And that was the same with my counterpart all over Adelaide, very, very well. Prior to that, I'd actually worked alongside the City Council for many years. I'm sort of an accidental everything. So it's sort of, I had been a general manager, I'd gone in, I was a program manager, but before that, I had spent many, many years in arts and culture. So I was the CEO of the Adelaide Fringe, I took that one annual for 4 years. I was the CEO of the Adelaide Festival. I worked on One Adelaide for 5 years. We started the film festival. I worked in the Docker Conference around Australia. Worked with Tim Flannery on setting up the museum 20 odd years ago. But so my work in arts and culture has gone back over 20 years. And that is mainly because I love the people that work in arts and culture. They're very dedicated, they're very passionate. You do find them in other sectors, but not ones that are willing to work endlessly for very little reward financially. So I find a lot of people in other sectors will work the same hours, but they are compensated quite well for the hours that they work.
I might just hand over to Tiffany now to do a little intro, and then we'll move into the leaders' insight.
Well, that's tough. I'm a mum of two. I'm an academic lecturer at the University of Adelaide. I also am the managing director of the Village Foundation, which I founded in 2018. I am a lead facilitator and designer of various training courses in empowerment and growth and leadership development for predominantly women. Women are my focus. Unashamedly. I'm a double Westpac scholar, which has been the most amazing experience of my life. And I spend my days between both roles, between all three roles, really, putting my PhD research into practice, not only in the work through the Village Foundation, but in my work with women in trauma and all sorts of developmental stuff.
So you can all see why we've got two amazing women to share an insight with us today. Now, if you've got any questions, for those of you in the room, obviously just raise your hand and we're going to do Q&A afterwards. For those of you online, please pop your question or advise me that you've got a question in the chat box. I'll facilitate that Q&A after the panel session. Anjani, is there just something you wanted to add quickly at all, just to do a little welcome?
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. I've flown in from Sydney. I have a business, I'm a speaker, an author and a mentor, and a big focus of my business is women's empowerment. So I call myself a women's empowerment advocate, and that's across the board from women leaders to emerging women leaders and also women who are coming up through the ranks, but also marginalized women from domestic violence, ex-offenders. So I did a lot of social enterprise work in that. So, and I just feel really grateful and honored to be here. So thank you. And excited to talk about love.
Love, beautiful word. All right, let's kick start. So Tiffany, let's start with you to do a 3-minute leaders insight just enjoy just the learnings that you can take away from this morning.
Thank you. I've written it, otherwise I'd talk for 15 minutes. All right, little story. I was married for 14 years, had one daughter. I was then with my second partner for 7 years. We had a daughter. Long story short, I now have 2 family access plans, 2 ex-relationships to manage, and 2 beautiful daughters without the nuclear family. When I walk my daughter into school every morning amidst the mostly traditional families, because she's still really young, it would be easy to feel like I have failed and easy to think things like, I just can't do relationships, I'm no good at this, I'm not good enough to have it all. And in the midst of my second relationship coming apart, someone very close to me at the time, not so much now, said to me, oh, well, Tiff, that's 2 down, insinuating that I had failed and as though I still didn't know how to be a good enough woman. So I let that hurt me for about a minute. And here's what they failed to see that I have seen as a woman who has gone through that experience. It was self-love that allowed me to validate my needs in both relationships. It was self-love that knew it was over and that toxicity had replaced growth. It was self-love of me and my 2 daughters that gave me the strength to walk away so that they would know what is not acceptable. They failed to see that instead of failing, I had grown. I became a woman, a mother, I found my own voice, I outgrew my environment, I learned about self-respect, my own power to support myself, to start and grow a business, to build my own networks of support, to establish my own financial independence. I'm not paid any child support. I was never given a settlement in both relationships. So everything I have done on my own. And these lessons didn't come cheap. There was abuse, there was pain, there were all the things I could hang my hat on and be sad about. And yet instead of drowning in the should haves and the could haves, I loved myself enough to always come back to the 2 most important tenets I live by, and that form the basis for all the training and developmental work I do with trauma and abuse victims, with young women, with leaders, with everyone. And they are: 1, take responsibility. Reflect, be honest with ourselves, stop pointing out there, stop looking out there, start looking inwards, own the things you do well, stand by the empowering choices you make, and own what you could have done better. And number 2, take action. The act of gratitude, of reframing, flipping situations, seeing silver lining, the action to make the changes needed, to seek the help, to break the patterns. And the most powerful act of self-love I've put into action was creating boundaries. Boundaries for what I allowed, for who I give my time to, for what I allow myself to think about and where I put my energy. These 2 relationships are not failings. They're not failures on my part. They are evidence of self-love. Taking responsibility and action enables an empowered mindset. And in the first step, it is the first step towards genuine self-love. And the best part is we can apply the principles to literally every situation that we have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability, Tiffany. Really appreciate you sharing that. Sandy, over to you.
Learned a lot about self-care, in particularly in the last 6 months. I think it's very crucial to our well-being and also personal growth. I think everybody realises that, but in the world that I've just come from, that sort of demanded perfection and constant comparison and being in the spotlight, it was really important that you embrace yourself fully. So it's hard not to see it, or you have to not see it as an indulgence or a selfish act. It is a fundamental necessity. And it begins with accepting yourself as you are, with your flaws and all your imperfections, and recognising that that is not defining of your worth. So it's it is actually, for me, it's been a time where I've had to really acknowledge all of the qualities that make me who I am, and working back to a place where I have what I would call inner peace. So and so I am no longer had validation from external sources, but instead had to find my strength again from within. And part of it was because of facing the loss, which is very personal, even though, you know, everybody goes, politics is not personal, but it is personal. So having to do that. It's also about setting really healthy boundaries, prioritising my own self-care, knowing when to say no. And I've managed to say no for a good 6 months now. It's been really challenging for me. I've started saying yes. That's also really challenging. But understanding that self-care is not a luxury, and in this instance, and all the time, is actually really necessary. It's the old oxygen mask first. Yeah. So a big part of it is letting go of self-criticism and negative self-talk. Being your harshest critic, I know I am mine, and which means that you focus on your flaws and your failures instead of all of the successes that you celebrate. So I've sort of really had to spend a lot of time thinking through all of the things that I'm so proud of, rather than the fact that I failed at this point. So well, I don't think that. I'm very lucky that I've got 2 or 3 very close and dear female friends that have known me for years, and they don't think that I have through any of this. So I'm still me, but that comes with from them a clear expectation that I dust myself up and I stop feeling sorry for myself and I start again. But that's actually been quite hard for me. So part of it was giving me permission to take time, which I haven't done over many, many years. So I've given myself time to rest, to reconnect, to read, to walk, and so that when the next thing comes along, that I'm ready. So it really is about patience and forgiveness and continuous self-reflection. So you are placing yourself in a better place for whatever comes.
Thank you, Sandy. There's so many little nuggets in what Sandy just shared then. And again, thanks for your vulnerability. I guess I've had the privilege of being part of your journey, and couldn't be more prouder of what you've achieved as a friend. Anjani, would you like to just summarise some of those learnings and share an insight?
Yes. Tiffany talked about that she realized she grew, not failed, but failure. There was no failure in her life. It was her growing and her outgrowing her situation and the people around her, and it has helped her establish her own independence, and that she learned she was not a victim. She didn't see herself as a victim, but grew in her own self-empowerment, what I can see. That the 2 tenets that she talked about around self-love are taking responsibility, and the number 2 is taking action. And then she also talked about creating boundaries as a part of taking action. Sandy talked about self-care being a fundamental necessity rather than a luxury, that it helps us bring about some inner peace, and that when she practiced her own self-care, It helped her find her own strength from within. She also talked about setting healthy boundaries, saying no when she means no, and saying yes when she means yes, which is hard, I think, for women a lot of the time. Letting go of self-criticism, focusing on her successes rather than her flaws, and giving herself permission to take time out so that she can get clarity on and really understanding who she is, getting ready for whatever next is coming into her life. So much, the two of you. There's so many things in there, like really juicy. So thank you very much.
Juicy.
Juicy. I think for me, when we talk about self-care and self-love, they're different things. So self-care is I go to the doctors, I get my teeth checked, I take a bath, I have a shower, I feed my body, I take myself out for exercise. That's self-care. Self-love is, I think, one of the most difficult things we could ever try to do in our life. Self-love is about, it's insourced. It's not anything outside of us. When we talk about self-love, for me, it's about how can I love myself when I'm achieving great things? And how can I love myself when I'm achieving nothing? When I feel the worst that I've ever felt, that I'm down, that I'm depressed, that nothing's going right in my life. I feel lonely, I feel isolated. How can I love myself then? And there's one practice that I do when I'm in those moments, and I say to myself, I fearlessly love myself because I royally stuffed this up. I fearlessly love myself even more because I'm feeling this way. So I tell myself that, I speak to myself, and I tell that part of me that's wounded or upset or sad or lonely that I am here for her. And I find that a very empowering thing. But I do feel that self-love, especially for women, because we are socialized and familiarized out of that, where we are conditioned to love and take care of everyone else but ourselves. So I feel this is a really important message that we need to receive today for ourselves, and then go out and share that with our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, and all the women in our life, whether we are in family or in friendships or at work. Really important message.
Thank you, Anjali. I'm just going to open up for questions. Tanya's got a question online. Tanya, I'll come to you in a minute. But just picking up on Anjali's point there about the way she practices not just self-care but self-love. Sandy and Tiffany, I'll start with you, Sandy. Can you give us some practical examples or some language that you might use for, on a daily basis perhaps, or on a regular basis, that, something I like everyone to take away something practical. So is there a practical exercise or language that you might use? Sandy, I'll start with you.
But certainly, it's, for me, it's giving myself permission, as you said. A lot of it is that we don't give ourselves permission to accept what's going on in our lives, or we spend so much energy fighting against what's happening, as opposed to actually sitting with yourself and allowing yourself to be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. And in the end, you sort of, been through different things, you sort of know deep, and you're going to get through it. You know that you're going to come out the other side, but sometimes you just have to let yourself.
I think Anjali was allowing that stillness, or almost.
Yeah.
Tiffany?
For me, the practical side is really quite cognitive. So I will remind myself that I'm not in anyone else's situation. So often, a bad habit I used to have is that I would do a lot of comparing with me and where other people are at. And so I don't really do that anymore. I've sort of gotten myself out of that habit by reminding myself that no matter what it looks like, they're still on this planet, they're still learning and growing. And whatever the challenges that they are having, I don't know about, but you know, mine are mine and my wins are my wins. And so I generally do a sort of a mental, if I'm having a really rough day, firstly, I allow myself to have a rough day and I don't make myself wrong for it. And I allow myself to go inward if I need to. And then I sort of, you know, do a checkbox. Tiff, this is what you've achieved in the last 6 months in terms of not achievements, but this is what you've done and gone through and learnt. And then I sort of do another little, don't worry about what they're doing, because if I think about all my most successful friends that I know really well, I know the traumas they're going through every day, despite what it looks like on Instagram. So I remind myself that everyone is human, that everyone is in the same boat. It doesn't matter if some people are look to be achieving this and that, what's happening on the inside we can't see. And I just bring myself back to that. And I just wanted to make a point about what you said, loving yourself on those days. I had the most beautiful lesson taught to me by a cousin when I was about 15, and she said to me, you've got to love yourself. You've got to love yourself, you know, all of you. And I said, I will. I'll love myself when. And she said, no, right now. And it clicked, and it went in at that point. And when I was about 15, I went, oh, okay. And it just kind of sunk in. But it's sometimes I think unless you're told that, like you say, you do wait until you've ticked all the boxes and you look really successful. You think, you know, you've reached some summit. That's my practical.
Thank you. Tanya, have you got your question?
Yeah, so hello everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there today. But I was just wondering, for any of the three women in the room who'd like to answer, do you have any strategies or like tools that you use for when negative self-talk creeps in? Yeah, because that's something that I struggle with at the moment.
Thank you, Tanya. Let's start with Anjani and then we'll go across the panel.
Tanya, it's a great question. I don't think there's any woman in this room that doesn't have that. And the practical way I deal with that is to challenge it and say, grab it. So I go, no, I'm not going to let you dictate to me how I'm going to feel or think about myself. So I challenge it and I say no, and then I will replace it with something that's kind to myself. So I just will say, no, I'm not listening to you, go away. And then I tell myself, I'm doing great, I'm doing my best, I'm not perfect, but I'm doing really well. That's what I do.
And Anjali, just on that, and also acknowledging, it's also about having the awareness of knowing when you are having that negative self-talk. Sometimes we even miss it.
Absolutely, that's the key. It's self-awareness, and we need space to observe ourselves. We need to be deliberately observing our thoughts during the day in order for us to catch it. So that's the key. That's 75% of the way there to changing it, is if we can catch ourselves in the moment thinking that thought, then we can challenge it. So yeah, you're right. The biggest piece is self-awareness.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Well, I use two things. One is a little bit of humour. If I do catch myself, I kind of go, well, gosh, were you just negative Nancy today? And kind of pull myself out of it and just kind of, sometimes I need to just write it down and get it out, and then it stops spinning around and I can move forward. I'm very blessed with a preteen right now, who loves to criticise everything I do. So I actually spend a lot of time in my positive, telling myself amazingly how great I am at it. So I'm not so much in negative talk right now because she does so much for me that I find myself telling her how great I am. But if I do catch myself, she's such a blessing, you know. But that if I do catch myself really spiraling, and it's rare these days because we do this work, right? But if I do, I use her and I sort of think, if she was saying this, how would I feel? And I would hate for her to be saying these things about herself. And so I put that onto me, and I see my inner, 12-year-old, and I'll be kind, much like you, I guess.
Thank you. Sandy?
I think that the main thing is that I will, if I do catch it, that I will try and talk to myself as if I was talking to my best friend or my best friend. Because she would never talk to me like that. Like, she would never say those sorts of things about me, and I would never, you know, if she was talking to me and criticising herself to that extent, you know, you would step in and go, no, that is not who you are, and that's not what you do. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone got a question in the room? I think our morning minds. Anyone want to share something that you've learned in the room this morning? It's too cold this morning.
I guess maybe an observation. And my reaction I actually do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think also something you said, and I don't know exactly what, but just triggered me to say back. It's also really important when you notice that you're not being kind to others or yourself to know sometimes the self-talk is a really big gift. And sometimes the reason I write it down is because if you find yourself repeating a negative thought or a negative belief, so I suck at this, or I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is, that's you take that to whoever you go and do your work with, you know, which I highly recommend everyone does with someone, and you use it. And where did that stem from? Where's the root of that? Because it's from somewhere very young, and it's a belief that you've generally formed as a child or an infant, or, you know, someone that you might not remember. But if you do the work with the right person or the right people, then you will unlock it, and then you can start to build new neural pathways to, you know, to change that thought pattern. But you need to know it, own it, take responsibility for it, and then take action around it. And so writing down those negative thoughts is, you know, the first step in being aware of it, so that you can then take it and do the work on it. So thanks.
Anthony, do you want to expand on that as well?
I like to keep things simple because I know that it's just really hard. We're all busy, aren't we? We've got lives, we've got work, we've got kids, we've got responsibilities, and it takes time. It takes a long time to grow your own self-worth, your own self-esteem. So I would say, if you're starting out on this path, or this is something new, or you'd like to just develop to that next level, it's about coming back home to self and just taking a moment, you know, stop, pause, and take a moment throughout the day, whenever it is, and just reflect. How am I doing today? What do I need today for me? If you keep it that simple, it will take you a long way.
Thank you. As we wrap up the online part, just Sandy, do you want to just make some concluding remarks?
I'll just do some breathing, just to sort of back into my body, out of my head, back into my body.
A good last piece of advice there: get out of your head and back into your body, because the head can spin out a little bit. So if we can all just remember that, I think that's an important little takeaway. So thank you to our panelists. Appreciate their time and their vulnerability. I think that is absolutely what this little session is all about. It's about putting a little pep in your step every first Friday of the month. So I'm now going to say farewell to those of us online, and I'm going to introduce Anjani to kick off the workshop for those who are in the room. So thanks everyone online. Have a great day, and hope you've got a little pep in your step for a Friday. Say bye.
Bye.